Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Healing Hearts, relationship advice on love and communication. Navigating relationships can be both incredibly rewarding and deeply challenging, all at the same time. In this episode, we dive into essential relationship advice to help you build and maintain healthy relationships. We'll explore the complex issues of infidelity, codependence, and effective communication, offering insights and strategies to heal and strengthen your bonds. Whether you're facing obstacles or simply want to deepen your connection, this episode provides actionable lessons on respect, trust, and repair. Join us as we uncover the keys to lasting love and the foundation of truly healthy relationships. My guest and I both have over 4 decades of experience in couples therapy, and we will offer a broader perspective on why certain behaviors might arise. By understanding these external factors, listeners will gain insight into their situations and consider how to address these influences in their own lives. The journey of understanding and enhancing relationships is ongoing. Each conversation, each moment of vulnerability, and each effort to communicate openly brings us closer to healthier, more fulfilling connections in our relationships. We invite you to take the lessons from our discussion today and apply them to your own life. Relationships are one of the most important parts of our lives, and yet we don't have relationships as a subject in high school or college. There is a lot to learn about how to go about making relationships work, which is why I do this podcast and don't have any ads to make money. Relationships are a complicated business, and we all need to improve our skills to help them last with a vitality over the years. Our guest today is Keith Jordan, LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker with 4 decades of experience in psychotherapy and couples counseling. Keith is the founder of Couples Therapy Assistance Delivery and creator of the Couples Therapy Assistant CTA mobile app, designed to expand access to resources for couples therapists. His experience spans private practice, community-based mental health, co-parenting counseling, and integrating innovative tools like AI into therapy. So, thanks for being here, Keith. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
So I'd like to begin by asking if you recall the September-October 2017 issue of Psychotherapy Networker that was titled Bad Couples Therapy, which basically said that it was a dirty little secret of the field that most therapists were not adequately trained to work with couples. And I wonder what you think, if there's still any truth to that.
Yes, that certainly is true.
Yeah, I think so too. When I trained in Cape Cod in the Gestalt framework, we went off doing very intensive work with couples and each other, and it was over and over and over again with feedback and real issues, and it was a wonderful experience that I don't think is replicated anywhere anymore. Do you agree?
Well, I don't know about your particular program, but I do know that there are a lot of people who sort of do couples therapy along with their regular practice, and they don't have specific training in couples therapy. I myself have been specializing in couples therapy, and I not only have taken quite a few different courses and trainings, but I also have provided them.
Yeah, and there was a family therapy clinic back in the day, which I also got to intern at, which really focused on family and couple dynamics. But I think it's gotten lost in the shuffle, so I appreciate that you're making a contribution to improving things. What are your beliefs about why people get divorced?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that, I work on in my sessions is that they have very poor communication. Mm-hmm. And the communication devolves into arguments, and the arguments escalate into, not being able to talk to each other. They either are yelling at each other or they walk out of the room and don't come back to it. And they just get so frustrated with each other. Even though a lot of times it's not that they're incompatible, it's just that they're not understanding each other.
Yeah, that's true. And we are the bridge to try to help cross that divide.
That's correct, yes.
So my understanding is that the highest percentage of divorce currently at almost 50% is gray divorce, meaning people in their 60s and up. And what are your suggestions for restoring trust and respect in long-term relationships?
Well, I think one thing that I've noticed is that the longer that people stay together, the more they think they know their partner.
Yes, I would agree with that completely. Uh-huh.
And so they make assumptions about what the other person is thinking or what they mean by what they're saying or how they're acting or their expression on their face. And often they're not correct. And yet they base their decisions on those assumptions. So one of the things I do is help them to recognize that it's an assumption and to help them see that what their partner was saying and intended to mean wasn't the same thing that they heard.
Restoring curiosity instead of that kind of inner monologue, self-narration of their superior knowledge of the other person.
That's right. Sometimes they think they know their partner better than the partner knows themselves.
Yes.
And there might be some aspects of that that are true, but probably not most.
I would agree with that. Yes. So it is my belief that unspoken resentments between partners that pile up over time create a lot of destruction in relationships. What are your recommendations to help couples navigate? And usually they're unspoken resentments, though certainly they can also be spoken.
Well, first of all, to get the unspoken thoughts and feelings and concerns spoken, expressed outwardly, directly to the partner. And the best way to do that is to talk about what the feelings are, what those feelings are about, and what they need in order to feel better about the situation or resolve it in their mind.
I don't particularly like the word closure, but it sounds like be able to close that circle because it's unfinished business that's just kind of haunting.
Yes, and often it's from decades worth of resentment. And so I think it's important. Two things are important. One is to work on being able to, be in the present, talk about your present concerns. But the other thing is for the partner to be able to listen and hear concerns that are from the past. So I think both of those things are necessary because no one is going to be able to completely forget the past. And no matter how much the partner insists that they should, it doesn't mean they're going to. On the other hand, the more that you're able to talk about what's going on in the present, the more you're going to be able to deal with the present situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that is very true. What about infidelity in the past that hasn't really been tied up in a complete understanding and it's still haunting the relationship?
Well, first of all, I think that the person who did the infidelity actions needs to recognize and understand that their partner isn't going to be over it just because they are. They might think, well, I've moved on. I don't have any of these issues or wishes or attempts to be unfaithful in any way. So I wish they'd just get over it already and forget about it and realize that I'm faithful and loyal to them. It's not so easy for the partner who's been betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for the person who would rather forget about it to realize that their partner isn't going to just forget about it because they want them to, or because they say you should.
Yeah, that's true. I certainly often I've heard people, the person who did the infidelity, they just want to like, okay, it's over. What's the deal? Why is it still going on? And that, do you have any time frame in your head that you think is ordinary for people who've been betrayed?
I don't know any kind of scientific studies about
No,
it, but
I don't either.
I would say that it's not uncommon for it to be at least a year that, people are still trying to work it out and still feel that they need to discuss it with their partner. Usually the partner thinks that about a month it should be plenty, but it isn't.
And I think a year makes sense because of anniversary reactions. I had a man once, and he came in and he said, and it's so funny. I still remember it was February. And he said, I don't know why she's just so unhappy, and I don't know what's going on. And I looked at him and I said, isn't this when you had your affair? Wasn't it in February? And he went, oh, yeah. And he didn't make that connection at all. And I think anniversary reactions of death, grief, infidelity, divorce, I think they all have, it's something that often happens for people.
Yeah, and like you said, sometimes they don't even realize it.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Would you share your thoughts on codependency and when it is problematic in a relationship? Because certainly there are times when codependency is important in offering support. I really enjoyed Sue Johnson, who's passed away, but she made that comment about Americans. She was Canadian in a workshop, and she said, Americans are so fixated on codependency. And when I was sick, my husband was codependently helpful and important to my healing. And it really made me think about how we are a little bit entrenched in the one side of it, though I think that's important as well. It's my belief that people don't make enough of a distinction about healthy and unhealthy codependency. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think that it is important to be realize that you're dependent on each other and that there's interdependence. That's a healthy part of a relationship. If it's unhealthy codependency, it's something that isn't really helpful to either one.
That's right.
And I think it's important to really, ask each partner, what is the effect of this, whatever the codependent belief or action is, what is the effect of this on the relationship and on each of you as an individual? And what do you think is healthy about it? What do you think might be unhealthy about it?
Do you have an example of unhealthy codependency?
Well, when somebody does things for their partner that the partner could just as well do for themselves, or when someone bases their whole self-worth on whether the partner approves of them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if someone has an alcohol or drug problem and you're enabling their addiction, that would certainly be a form of unhealthy codependency.
Yes, I would agree. I often hear people in their 20s and 30s casually say if somebody had an affair, that would be the end of the relationship. And I suspect that you and I believe that relationships can be repaired after an affair. What are your ideas about healing beyond what we've already talked about?
Well, as I said before, it's important to, be able to, for the partner who's been betrayed to express themselves, and for the person who's done the betrayal to be able to listen and not hurry the process along. It's also important to take a look at what led to it. Not that it excuses the behavior, but that it does help to explain what was going on with both parties that might have led to this happening. And there's such a large variety of different things that could lead to
Yes.
it, from self-esteem to depression to loneliness to anger. It's just a lot of different things that contribute, and it's useful to take a look at what what led to it, and are those factors still present in the relationship?
Yes. And I think loneliness, we don't talk about that very often, but I think that's often a factor for people. And maybe even they're surprised because maybe the person they had the affair with, they weren't looking for it, but it came to them. It arrived, and not really being aware of the level of loneliness, and then as something evolves out of that. And I don't think it's something we talk about enough. Do you agree?
Definitely, I agree, and I think part of that is that couples might live together and spend a lot of time together, and still not feel connected. So there's
Yes.
loneliness within the relationship.
What improves connection so that people understand intimacy and not just being in business together of sharing space and cooking?
Right. Well, certainly the more that you're able to share feelings with each other and to listen to those feelings is one part of it. Another is paying attention to what the Gottmans call bids, which is that they're bids for attention from the partner. So you might, look out the window and say, "Oh, that's an interesting bird," and the partner has the choice of how to respond to that. They could say, "Oh, let me see it," or they might say, "Shut up already," or they might just ignore them, read the paper, or whatever they read these days, and so those things have an effect, cumulative over time. And the more that you're able to engage with the partner and show interest in what the partner's saying and doing, the more the connection is likely to be there.
And again, I think that's something that we don't talk about enough, that people aren't aware of. Those little moments that layer and build into a connection. And the more, I know my favorite thing about the Gottmans is that the more you turn your back to somebody else, your partner, the more likely you are to be divorced. And turning towards your partner is another way to think about bids.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that very much. Everyone comes in for help with communication problems. What are your ideas that can help my audience improve their ability to communicate?
Okay. Well, some of them are pretty simple, and they might seem, to a lot of people, they seem artificial or fake or, not natural. But certainly the active listening process is really important. And that includes giving the person your full attention, being able to express your feelings from an I feel standpoint, and not I feel that you're a jerk, but I feel sad or angry. And, talk about what it's about and what your needs are. And then the other person to be able to listen without interrupting. And a rule that I give people is don't speak for more than 60 seconds at a time. Because after 60 seconds, their partner is going to drift off or feel compelled to interrupt or have so much disagreement with what the person's saying that they can't focus on listening anymore. So keep the sharing brief and then invite the person. I'm not sure whether you clearly understood what I said. Could you let me know what you think I'm telling you?
Especially if let's say they're going to talk about money, because money is such a problem, and for many people. So say, I know that it's really hard to talk about this subject, and you may be reluctant because you feel I've got some ideas about your spending habits. And that's not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about, how can we be a team and try to repair some of this problem. And so you're acknowledging that there's a way you've crowded, it might even be better to say I've crowded you in the past, and I don't want to do that. So is there something you can tell me that I can do to make it easier for you to stay in this conversation with me instead of walking away? But those kinds of things that really are trying to acknowledge the other person before you even start your little campaign on whatever the subject is that you think needs to be addressed. And I think that's helpful. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think certainly being clear and being specific and letting the person know, especially letting them know what your needs are, is really important.
Yes. Vulnerability and openness.
Yes,
and
exactly.
This is really important. Do you have any advice for couples with money issues? Because that's such a common predicament. And we tend to marry our opposites,
Yeah.
in the money vein.
Yes. So if we can learn to appreciate that about the partner, that's certainly true in my own marriage, that one person tends to hold on to the money and the other one tends to see it as something that's there to be used. And so it certainly does create conflict in a lot of cases. I think it's important to be able to learn to appreciate the other person's perspective and not judge it as, well, because it's not how I do it, it's wrong. But to be able to communicate with each other and say, all right, I have a need to not feel like money's being wasted, and you feel a need to not feel that money is being hoarded and not given its due purpose. So how do we connect both of these needs and both of these perspectives and reach some compromise and agree on, okay, in these situations, it's up to you whether you want to spend money or not. In these other situations, let's make it a joint decision about how the money is going to be spent.
And meeting in that messy middle. And it is a messy middle. It has so much uncertainty to it, which is why people avoid it, because uncertainty is so problematic when you have anxiety. And being able to give it some time to stay in that messy middle where you are appreciating. You really need both sides with money. You need to spend it and enjoy it, and you need to be careful and have an emergency backup fund and, some practicality to it. But both polarities really matter. And I think that is really where you have to start from, believing that both of you have something to offer.
Definitely. And it's also important to realize that the more that people get defensive or, feel that they're being attacked about their approach to money, the more there's a tendency to get more entrenched.
Yes.
And so the polarity actually increases over time sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Any advice about defensiveness in particular?
Yeah. To realize that you're defensive, first of all. All right? To have that self-awareness. Okay, what's going on with me? I'm feeling like I'm being attacked. So let me acknowledge that this is going on, and you can feel defensive without being defensive. So
that's a nice point. Yes, that's absolutely right. Yep.
So you can recognize, I'm feeling defensive. That's a clue to me that what I need to do is not argue. It's a clue to me that what I need to do is listen and show understanding of the other person's point of view. And I might disclose that I'm feeling attacked, but not accuse the other person of doing it to me.
And maybe even in that moment, though it might not be possible, is considering that the feeling attacked is an exaggerated emotion.
Yes. Often the person doesn't mean to attack, and you feel more attacked than the reality really is. And a lot of it also in terms of defensiveness, goes back to past traumas and reaction to past situations that were traumatic to the person. And so it's almost like a PTSD response. That's why it might seem like an exaggerated response to something that seems innocent.
Yes, that's right. I would agree with that. So many people suffer from black-white 110 thinking and feeling. I see this as an obstacle to communication and repair. How do you help people recognize that problems are more complicated and solutions lie in the 4, 5, 6, 7, or the gray, the messy middle?
Well, I think it's important to realize, okay, I'm somebody who has a tendency to think in black and white. And so therefore, I need to check myself and ask myself, is that what I'm doing right now? Because usually the black and white thinking is not the best. So it's useful to be able to know this is what I'm doing, not to judge yourself for it, but to realize that there's another way to look at things and to see that there might be gray areas that, and sometimes both partners are black and white in opposite directions. And so they both need to do that.
Well, that's a neat trick. I think it's hard for people that are black and white to imagine that messy middle or imagine. And so maybe try to, if you are someone who is black and white or 1 in 10, try to think about what number 2 might be. Or number 3, move just a little movement towards that messy middle where the other person might even be able to be right. Yeah. For about some piece of it, that there's just those little steps towards the middle, and self-awareness. I did a whole podcast episode on self-awareness because in January, just myself, I generally do that in January, and I think it's just something we've begun to lose track of is being self-aware. What do you think about that?
I think it's really important. I think that being able to notice when it is that you're feeling something is really important to be able to do. That's why with the app that I created, the Couples Therapy Assistant app, one feature of that is a daily check-in. It doesn't have to be daily. It can be any frequency. But you're just prompted, what are you feeling right now and what are you feeling about your relationship? So it gives people an opportunity to take a look inside and say, what's going on with me? How am I feeling and what is it that this is all about? And then it's also, they're encouraged to share it with their partner. Not only to have that self-awareness, but then also to share with their partner. I just noticed that I'm feeling discouraged about something. Is it all right if we talk about that?
Yeah. And I think the vocabulary of feelings, there's an emotion wheel on Amazon for like $12 or something. And I'm always suggesting that people consider getting it because identifying what the feeling, and I liked how you used discouraged because that's not a word I feel discouraged, that's not something we say we might say sad, but I like the preciseness of the word discouraged. And I think it's more descriptive and therefore more connecting.
Yes. And, like you're saying, sometimes it's helpful to sort of visually look at all of the feelings that might be possible. And so which one applies to me? A lot of people are not very emotion literate.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yes, that's right. I used to have a stack of cards I started an incest program back in the 80s when there were only 2 books written about it. And I had a stack of index cards with feelings. And I would have the kids or the adults just pull out 4 or 5 that fit how you're feeling. Don't think about it, just pull them. And then let's talk about each card. And I think that trauma, as we were talking about a moment ago, can also fuzz up feelings. And that work of being more precise and being able to identify, I think, helps you for the rest of your life.
Definitely. It helps with self-awareness, self-acceptance, and communication.
Yeah. How do you help a couple shift their attitude from the old negative narrative they have about their partner spinning in their head? It's so easy to get stuck in the story we tell ourselves about all our partner's negative traits, our favorite things, that feeds the delicious comfort of blame.
Yeah. It's hard to just let go of those things. They're pretty entrenched a lot of times. What I like to do is help them to talk about what they appreciate about the partner. I know their partner isn't all bad, and to see that no one's going to be perfect, and there are going to be things that you don't like very much about what a person says or does. But it's certainly possible to balance that out with being able to not only appreciate within yourself, but share that appreciation with your partner. And also to talk about it and say, this is something that I notice I have a problem with, and I seem to have a resentment about it. Can we talk about it, because I really don't want to feel this resentment or this grudge.
What about what can help people to step into speaking aloud that have walls up and don't really practice sharing much? What is a couple of steps you might recommend that could be helpful to them?
Well, one thing I recommend is journaling. It can help people to be more aware of what's going on with them, especially if the journal is, something that emphasizes this is what I'm feeling right now, kind of thing. And the more that you're self-aware, and the more that you feel self-accepting, and the more that you feel that your partner is accepting you, the more you're able to be more open and to allow yourself to see things about yourself that you might otherwise try to hide.
When you're aware of your own negative attributes, and AA has an expression, when you're pointing a finger at somebody else, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. And I think there's a humility that you have from self-awareness of owning your own negative traits that I think is really helpful to being willing to share and being willing to say more about that. I did this, and I'm aware that it was unfair to you, and I don't feel good about that. And is there a way maybe we can try to understand this differently so I can get better?
And I think a big obstacle to that is shame. People feel shame about some aspect of themselves, or what they do, or how they feel, or even something they've experienced. And it's helpful to be able to talk about those things that seem shameful, and something the partner can do is to show acceptance and not add additional shame.
And I've often thought that's one of the things that's difficult when somebody's recovering from addiction and they've been in a spiral of relapsing, and the other person doesn't believe them anymore, whether it's a parent or a partner or whoever. And I think they can also accidentally feed in and add into that shame. I agree with you completely that shame is one of the biggest obstacles to healing. I really believe that. And I think I like your point about journaling, because if you can write about what you're ashamed about in your journal, and then to pick one person, and maybe even if you can't say it out loud, write a different paragraph and ask them if they'd be willing to read it. And that might be a beginning. Somebody said to me in another interview that people need to take she didn't call it mini steps. She said a mini yes. And so I like that a lot, and it's really stuck with me. And so I've been really, since that interview, I've been thinking about how to help people make smaller steps. And that's why I came up with the 2. You know, if you're a 1 and 10 person, you could be a 2 or a 9 person. And I think that those mini yeses, those small moments. So here's a paragraph I wrote about something I'm really ashamed about, and I want to share it with you. And it's really important that you not add to that shame accidentally, even, because, you know, but I need to practice sharing, and this is my first mini yes step.
Yes. And I think another thing with journaling that I think is useful is to have a response to what you write coming from your wise spiritual self. So you can talk about what you're feeling, and then what would my wise spiritual self say about that? And you can have that dialogue, a written dialogue with yourself that way.
Yeah, that's I like that. Please, are there any other morsels of wisdoms you have to offer my audience that we haven't covered today?
Well, certainly to be a little bit self-promoting, I certainly recommend that people get the Couples Therapy Assistant app that I created. It's something that is used by couples therapists to help their clients gain more benefit in between the therapy sessions. And it's something that is only available to people who are in couples therapy. So it has to be approved of by a therapist who's a licensed therapist.
Love is messy, and healing isn't a straight line, but it does have a lot of good detours. Keep steering toward curiosity, not judgments. Say something brave, shift away from the negative narrative in your head, and let your relationship surprise you. You listened all the way to the end. Thanks so much, and please sign up to follow me on Instagram and most social media at Rhoda on Couples.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.